Inconceivable wankers, this is a review of Superman versus the Elite. This review does have spoilers, so if you haven't seen this yet and are planning to, you may want to check out the movie before you check out this review. I will say I enjoyed Superman versus the Elite immensely, and I hope that many people see it. On to the actual review. This is probably in the top 3 of the best movies in the DC direct-to-video line, my favorite being Batman Under the Red Hood. Probably one of the biggest advantages this movie has as an adaptation is that it's based on a single issue from Action Comics. Action Comics 775, I think, if I remember correctly. Which is great considering the standard length of the DC Universe animated movies are usually around 70 minutes or so. This is something that Superman Doomsday and All-Star Superman suffered from, for example, because the stories of Superman Doomsday, for example, the death of Superman, is a very, very long story and couldn't possibly be done justice in 75 minutes. This is also true for All-Star Superman, because All-Star Superman is very loosely related, 12 issues up until the end, where the final issue is very important to tying everything together. So that's something challenging for the DC Universe animated movies to do in 75 minutes. Another great advantage this movie has is the writer of the comic, Joe Kelly, wrote the movie as well, so the adaptation is very true to the spirit and the characters of the source material. I haven't read too much of Joe Kelly's work, but I absolutely loved his work on Deadpool, with its great humor, so I was very pleased to see him adapting his own work. Joe Kelly's take on Superman is the way I generally like the character portrayed. In his commentary, Joe Kelly says that the correct way to approach Superman is to be genuine and to not treat Superman or his material as corny, which is a mistake that other writers have made before. The very first scene in the movie is an example of how many people in our modern world perceive Superman as a corny, goody-two-shoes Boy Scout. In a way, I find that kind of sad, because even before viewing this movie, I did genuinely enjoy and appreciate Superman as a character. Bruce Timm said in the All-Star Superman commentary that in order to avoid this perception, people, writers, he included himself in this, have tried to give a darker edge to Superman. He said that after reading the All-Star Superman comic, he found that Superman could be relevant and a relatable character without giving him a darker edge. Not that all of Bruce Timm's work on Superman was against the spirit of the character or his lighthearted nature, just occasionally, like in Superman Doomsday, or when Superman would fight Darkseid, Superman would be given a kind of darker edge. Superman vs. the Elite clearly follows this idea that Bruce Timm got after reading All-Star Superman, is that to be genuine to the character and to be genuine to the general tone that the character has. As Superman vs. the Elite clearly follows this because Superman tries to uphold his traditional morals in a cynical world. Superman believes that all life is precious and that mankind at its heart is good. Like Jor-El says in the Richard Donner movie, Superman's purpose is to fulfill humanity's potential for good, since they only lack the light to show them the way. The Elite, especially their leader Manchester Black, represents a philosophy opposing Superman's views on what is the best way to deal out justice. How the general public reacts to the Elite, I would say, is very realistic. The public loves the Elite, which is shown several times, my favorite being when one of the Superbots said that of the internet hits on the Elite, 2,800,000 say, "These guys rock." Which is a pretty funny moment for Lois as well. I don't want to get into any political debates or wars, but it doesn't surprise me to see many Americans within this movie endorsing a team of anti-heroes that use lethal force. It seems more and more on the news that police officers and such use lethal force against criminals that could be taken into custody, which I know isn't 100% true, but it just feels more common nowadays. To me, I think more Americans than ever right now are in a more violent mindset, where violence is cool or is an appropriate response to most situations. I'm not one to judge, since I have, of course, watched many action movies and superhero movies, and I've thought to myself, yeah, now hit him in the face, right in the face. I just personally think games like Call of Duty should not be the most popular type of video game that everybody plays nowadays, even if they're fun. I probably will lose our respect for that comment, but I just wanted to illustrate how much darker the world seems to have gotten. And I'm not trying to criticize the gamers who play Call of Duty or the people who make the games. I'm just trying to make a point, and I'm sorry if I offended anyone saying that. Going back to the public reaction, there are several people who make comments that I know people share in the real world. Like the little kid who's dressed up as Superman who says, "Superman is so beat." There is a person in this movie who comments on the news saying that all the wrongdoers should be killed and God should sort it out. This comment especially I could easily imagine being on the news in real life, and I really don't agree with it personally. I want to be clear, I'm not talking against religion or anything like that, but this comment just bugs me. It just bugs me that some people do have this thought process to justify killing all the enemies that our countries have. Again, I'm not going to put any words in anybody's mouth, but I know some people do think like that. In the real world, I do think many people would agree with the elite, but I cannot say for sure if supporters of the elite would be in the majority, just as I cannot be certain what the real world would be like if there were superheroes. Now that I'm off my soapbox and probably guaranteed myself some negative comments, let's get my personal views out of the way and continue talking about the movie itself. The most interesting thing about the conflict between Black and Superman is that both sides have valid arguments. This is the best part of the movie. Both sides are given good arguments. And probably the thing that also makes this movie very good, it's that it's a philosophical debate on a grand, super heroic scale with superpowers. And that's something that I think should be done more often in comics. Excuse me. Manchester Black, he points out a pretty obvious dilemma that all supervillains and criminals just break out of jail and kill more innocent bystanders. The Atomic Skull shows us this argument and the terrible consequences that occur when the criminals break out of jail. Black also examines the political situation in the world and argues that with their power, why should they not topple the corrupt rulers in the world, represented in this movie by two fictional countries called Pakistan and Bialia. Manchester Black's greatest moment is probably after he announces that the leaders of Pakistan and Bialia are as dead as a bunch of dead wankers. And he announces to the citizens of both countries on international TV, "So congratulations children, your leaders are all dead." Some people believe in the idea that if a government is not functioning properly, that it should be brought down and started again from scratch. When Superman said that at their core humanity was good, it actually cuts to Black scoffing as he listens to Superman's speech. He firmly believes that humanity is not good at its core. Superman tells him, "We need to show the world that people can be better." And Black retorts with, "But that's the problem, they can't." There is much validity to this statement, and a person's view on this just might depend on just how they perceive the world and how they grew up. Black has a complete right to the opinion that, humans at their core are not good, but he and the elite go too far, and Superman just wants to make Black understand that the alternative can also be a possibility. Joe Kelly said in interviews that with this story he wanted to show that truth, justice, and the American way is an ideal that is still relevant today and important to appreciate. In Superman Returns, Perry White said the line, "truth, justice, and all that stuff," as if the American way is not all that important to Superman and how that line is said. It is an idea that defines the kind of philosophical debate Superman and Manchester Black are going through. In regards to the American way specifically, the movie provides two sides as to how it can be perceived. Manchester Black calls the American way the American military capitalist way. When Superman tells the elite that they can't kill people and call themselves heroes, Black, with another good retort, says, "Why not? Your government does it all the time." The other representative of this side of the American way argument is the talk show host, who asks why the elite would come after America, since Americans are, quote, the good guys. This is again tying into what Black said, that, the Americans military calls themselves heroes when they kill people. The other side of the American way government is Pa Kent. He represents the American ideal. He says that people are capable of getting out of the bandwagon mindset once they see who is driving that bandwagon. He supports Clark and clears his mind by saying that truth, justice, in the American way isn't broken, so it doesn't need to be fixed. Superman's argument of no killing has its inherent fault when Black points out that Superman does not really know what it's like to live in fear. So it's a bit easier for him to take out the bad guys without killing them because of his great power. Superman's counter-argument to Black saying that he doesn't know what it's like to live in fear is the classic concept of absolute power corrupts absolutely. Professor Baxter argues this against the talk show host, asking how can we trust the elite to pick who is guilty without judge, jury, or due process. Toward the end of the movie, the elite start showing their true colors, and when they kill the leaders of the two countries, try to kill Superman on international TV, and lead the final battle into Metropolis. A smart move this film makes is that before the elite try to take control, Superman does not judge them, but he views the elite as potential allies, despite their quirks, like Hat is always a drunk, Menagerie is pretty vulgar concerning sexual innuendos, Manchester Black is a smart aleck, etc. Black even shows that he does genuinely want to help people in danger when he uses his mind powers to assist Superman in saving a train with passengers. It's only until Black tries to kill the terrorists responsible that Superman begins to doubt whether the elite might be a force for good. This is great because it brings balance to both sides of the argument by showing Superman and Manchester Black could get along if not for their opposing viewpoints. In a way, the way he views Superman is that Superman is, he's sheltered from the real world. When he explains to Superman his origin, where his sister Vera almost gets run down by a train, Superman asks whether she survived, and Black responds that we don't all get happy endings, Superman. Second example is when Black shows Superman the room with his teleporter. Within his teleporter, which he calls Bunny, in his teleporter there's a room with all these televisions projecting newscasts showing how damaged the world is. Superman says that he is aware of all this damage within the world and that he's not an idiot trying to ignore it. Final example that really touches on how Black sees Superman and superheroes is when the elite go into the Fortress of Solitude. Black tells him that masks are for hiding and capes are for play, and that the threats that Superman deals with, the supervillains and the bank robbers, are not the real problem with the world. Black says to leave the real work and fixing the world to the elite. Superman finally responds to this viewpoint at the end of the movie when Black once again shows his perception when he tells Superman he is living in a dream world. Superman argues that dreams keep us safe and allow us to hope for a better tomorrow and a better world. This is a message that just makes me personally just feel good, where nowadays people are in a more cynical mindset. Some people may view Superman's speech at the end to be corny, but the entire movie itself is trying to say that these ideals still have meaning and should be appreciated. Another great aspect of this movie is Professor Baxter and his son Terrence. Professor Baxter is a fan of Superman and his philosophy, while he is aware of the faults within Superman's methods. As he explains at the beginning, when he's talking to Superman, he's playing devil's advocate, telling him, about all the property damage that his fight with the atomic skull caused. Excuse me. So he does know that there are problems within Superman's methods, but Superman's methods are better than the alternative of the philosophy might makes right. His son Terrence, on the other hand, is a big fan of the elite. When Professor Baxter dies protecting his son from the atomic skull, Terrence blames Superman because he let Atomic Skull live. This is probably the most powerful, or second most powerful scene in the entire movie. This directly puts the blame on Superman, and Terrence tells Manchester Black to kill Atomic Skull. This is the biggest defeat Superman suffers, and there's nothing he can do to fix what's happened. Another big defeat is the aforementioned scene where Black announces the death of the leaders of Pokolistani and Bialya, which is added on when Superman punches Black, which was made more powerful because it was in slow motion. It shows the Superman punching Black in slow motion as the entire world watches. Another statement that Joe Kelly has made in interviews concerning this story is that many comic book readers are now more invested in anti-heroes that are darker and questionable in their methods. Joe Kelly poses the question, do we really want a Superman like that? Probably the best scene in this movie is when Superman fakes the audience out and pretends to become what the Elite are. The world is frightened that Superman is killing the Elite and using lethal force. It turns out that Superman faked using lethal force, but it was to show the world that violence as a solution is a truly scary thing. I personally thought if Superman with his great power were to cross the line, it would be very scary, and it's the most powerful argument this movie makes for why Superman should be the way he is. If Superman would truly be a dark character, it would go against the character's ideals of decency. This movie is intelligently written to make this debate work by having Superman place the Superbots in Metropolis to save anyone caught in the battle. When Black says after their destructive battle, "You killed my team! Look at this place!" and the Superbots had not been there, Superman sparing Black's life would have been meaningless because he would have put people in harm's way, even when he knows better, as Black says to Superman after Superman beats him. When Black shouts about what Superman appears to have done despite knowing better, it is incredibly well written, and the voice acting from Black is tremendous, giving the scene great emotion. When Black is on his knees at Superman's mercy and he says, "You don't do this," I felt especially scared of Superman, and actually a bit sorry for Black, until Superman stops the act. This movie is not completely perfect in its debate of the two opposing viewpoints. While it raises great counter-arguments, the movie does sometimes seem to be on Superman's side a bit too much, especially towards the end. It might have been better if the viewer could decide which side they agreed with for themselves, but the movie does provide great support to agree with Superman, and also valid complaints with Superman's methods. But that's what's good about this movie. It's not completely on Superman's side, but sometimes, especially towards the end, it is a little too much on Superman's side. So yeah, but at the same time, Superman is very likable in this movie, despite the focus of the debate being more on him. But he is still very likable in this movie, and so I don't mind this fault with the movie too much. Something that also falls in line with this complaint is that it seems that the Elite do let their power corrupt them a bit too quickly. There should have been a clearer transition to when they're corrupted, but I also don't find this to be a major fault in the movie. The Elite are based on the Authority comic, according to Joe Kelly himself. I saw a podcast review of this movie featuring Browncoat Eric, or Blows Himself Up Dude, as he's also known. He said he's a big fan of the Authority. As a fan, he said that he had problems with the Elite because as a team based on the Authority, the Elite were too evil. From the beginning, the Elite look like the bad guys because they kill a dog. I cannot speak to this because I have not read the Authority, so that might be a problem, but looking at the movie by itself with no knowledge of the Authority, I don't have a problem with it. So, if you like the Authority, there is a chance you may not dig this movie too much. The dog being killed goes back more to my earlier complaint that sometimes we are too much on Superman's side by making the Elite out to be more like bad guys. Despite a few gripes, the conflict between Superman and Manchester Black is very well executed. I have always been and still am more of a Batman fan than a Superman fan, but this movie clearly points to how iconic Superman is, and how he should be highly regarded as a character. Having gone through the themes and philosophies this movie explores, I'll go more into the characters themselves. With the characters, I'll also talk about the voice actors. I've already spoken about Superman's character in this movie, but he is actually, again, very likable, and surprisingly good-humored until the main conflict in the movie takes full shape. In the scene where Lois and Superman go to England to see if an old lady knows anything about Manchester Black, Lois says about the old lady, if she knows anything, then I'm Martian Manhunter. And Superman just responds with, well, there goes all my fantasies. George Newbern as Superman reprises his role from Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. I think this is without a doubt his best performance as the character, though I loved his performance in Justice League Unlimited, especially in the episode For the Man Who Has Everything. George Newbern did a great job bringing a genuine quality to Superman, and his voice as Dark Superman, like when he pretends to use lethal force, was perfectly executed and quite unnerving. Lois Lane was great in this movie. They made a great choice having Lois know Superman's secret identity. She supports Superman in his decisions no matter what, but she does have more cynicism than Superman and can see more the other side of the argument. Lois admits that someday she does feel that terrorists and bad guys should be punished as severely as possible. That honesty Lois has towards her husband, I think they're married here, it doesn't say that they're married, but I'm pretty sure they are, is a great way to balance out the relationship. Excuse me. She does show her support for Superman when she tries to convince a crowd to listen to Superman and not kill the Atomic Skull. Lois Lane also, her relationship with Superman is treated like a partnership. They're both partners, they both help each other out, they both highly respect each other. And I wish more superhero relationships could be like this, where they're like Mary Jane and Spider-Man. Their relationship started out great, but as they got married, the more time they got married, she became more just the worrying, nagging wife. And so in JMS's run on Spider-Man, he played around the idea that they are partners, and so that's a very interesting dynamic to superhero relationships. And this is probably one of the best executed times I can think of that. Superman versus the Elite, with Lois being of equal of Superman. Not perhaps in physical power, but in just what they do. The Polly Parrot, who I think that's how her name is pronounced. I haven't seen her in many other things. She did a very good job with the voice, though at the beginning I think there are a few poorly delivered lines. Like, the one that came up at the top of my head is when she says, "You'll have your front page in 15 minutes, Chief." In that line, she sounded way too raspy. But other than that, she was great. She pulls off Lois's comedic dialogue perfectly. My favorite example of this is when Lois encounters Vera in an alley and says, "Are you here to tell me differently, or am I about to be shot in the face?" I have already talked about Manchester Black, but I'll mention a few things here. I always thoroughly enjoyed watching Manchester whenever he was on screen, because he was actually quite funny, and it was always interesting to see how he challenged Superman's viewpoint. Robin Atkin Downes did an absolutely perfect job in this role. I have heard the complaint that the British accents in this movie are not perfectly accurate, which may be true, I'm not sure since I'm American, so. But it is most important for Black's voice to be authentic. And Robin Atkin Downes is in fact British, so I doubt that his British accent is not authentic. But there are a couple other people in this movie who have the British accent that are not Manchester Black, such as the old lady and people in the flashbacks and stuff. So I'm not sure about them, but I'm pretty sure Manchester Black is good. Toward the end of the movie especially, I got a very Dragon Ball Z feeling from the fight scenes due to the emotional yelling with attacks that look like energy blasts, even though they are mind blasts. Manchester Black especially just yells a lot at the end, saying, "You bloody psychopath!" before blasting a mind wave at Superman. My favorite shout that Black makes towards Superman, before blasting him, is when Superman was still acting like he was Dark Superman using lethal force. Manchester Black throws like a giant blast at Superman. And he says, "Let me show you, you self-righteous hypocrite." The reason I like that line so much is that it carries out the theme of what Superman would be if he went dark. Having talked about Manchester Black a lot, it would be prudent to talk about the other members of the Elite, though none of them are as explored as Black. Coldcast was a pretty cool, who has a pretty cool energy projection power, is a pretty good character. Joe Kelly said that with this character he wanted to avoid the thought of political correctness and that there was no reason a black guy couldn't be a supervillain. He said that each member of the Elite are defined by their darkness, and he said that the chains on the character are something that he was really glad made into the design of the movie. He can also hurt Superman without kryptonite by using an electromagnetic pulse that disrupts the electrons in Superman's brain. Menagerie is a character that I have heard from other reviewers was too explicit in her innuendos. I personally, it did not bother me too much, but it is a valid complaint with the film, so I would say it depends on the person watching it. There's not too much to the character besides her innuendos, but she does appear to care for Coldcast, and he cares for her. Joe Kelly said that with the members of the Elite, he said that they wear their darkness on their sleeves, so I guess that's why Menagerie does not hold back in her comments. The Hat is my favorite of the Elite besides Black. He's pretty much just a drunk bum who can conjure magic from his hat. The Hat is also not all that deep of a character either, but I do find him funny, especially when he tells Superman his lucky numbers. His power, I think, is very cool, and it can also hurt Superman without the use of kryptonite. The biggest complaint lobbied towards this movie is the level of the animation, where the character designs are the cartooniest looking of the DC Universe animated movies. I will say that I do agree with this. This movie does not look as good as Batman Under the Red Hood or Justice League Doom. I will not go as far as to say the animation is bad, since there are parts in the movie where I thought it looked pretty cool, and especially towards the end, the animation really picked up. The animation just doesn't reach the quality of the previous films, and I'm not a big fan of how Superman's designed in this movie. If the animation quality is a very important factor to your enjoyment of this movie, then it will take this movie down a peg. Animation quality, of course, is a very important component to an animated movie, but the story is well told, and I liked it so much that I am able to personally look past the fact that the animation could have been better. Now that I'm done rambling, I can safely say that I highly recommend Superman vs. the Elite. With its great story, it is the best Superman movie in the animated movie department. I would even say that this is just my second favorite Superman movie, with the original Donner movie being the best and the Donner cut of Superman 2 being a very, very close third. All of the characters in Superman vs. the Elite are very believable, and it is a great examination of Superman's morals and his place in the modern world. Definitely worth watching. Next review will be a comic book review, which I'll be reviewing either Peter David Hulk Visionaries Volume 8 or Daredevil Guardian Devil by Kevin Smith. See you then, and thanks for watching.